Welcome to 15 And, where we grow through the transformative stories and principles from the Bible. I hope you enjoy this teaching. I hope you share it with others. And I hope you go to 15and.org, click the Donate Now button, and support this mission.
There's talk of the markets being nervous right now because I think it's like a auto parts brand that, come to find out, they've been borrowing against all kinds of different collateral they have through all kinds of different LLCs. And it's wild. Another car company that has borrowed against their inventory and then borrowed against that same inventory elsewhere. There's rot being exposed. And in that happening, there will be a reckoning. There's going to be stuff to come to account for that. And there is rightfully consequences for these things. But what's the point of it coming into the light? What's the point of it becoming clean? This week I was really interested because, like most effective things, you love them or hate them, I was really interested this past week because there's a church named Willow Creek, has had a sizable impact on the church worldwide. Much of what you would go and experience in many churches today, at some level, they were early to or innovated. And they were celebrating their 50th anniversary. And I was really interested to see how they were going to celebrate it. Because you may not know this, but they've had all of this impact, all of this influence. I mean, even just things that are happening still today, like multi-site, like they were early to innovate and lead the way on that. And their pastor had a dramatic exposure. And this guy was like the guy. His name was Bill Hybels. Come to find out, it had been dismissed for a while, but there were credible accusations of ways that he had made advancements towards women. I mean, it's dark stuff. It's dark stuff. All of you have some kind of awareness at some level of someone that you thought was special and maybe had influence in the world, and then you saw some kind of fall. Now, as I was watching this 50-year anniversary celebration, I was really keen to see how they handled it. And they were stacking rocks up for all the ways that they had seen God do great things. And I wondered how they would address it. As I wondered how they were going to address it, it really made me think what we're focused on in this series, Dirt, Rethinking Evil. That we don't have to imagine evil at the beginning. This is the conversation we're having at this point. We're going to look at Jesus and the demons and all of this stuff, but we don't have to imagine evil as this cosmic battle between good and bad sides, and they're equal in power and they're fighting it out. But no, bad is a parasitic of the good, like we learned from C.S. Lewis, that it's a distortion, it's a less than. And what we're focused on in this first part of this series is the first part of this model. Truth cleans the house, wisdom guards the house, unity extends the house. We're talking about truth cleaning the house. Now, we all have at some level, I would guess, in our homes or places we live, some kind of junk drawer, right? You got that place where it's just easier to throw things into it. And it's really not just mess, right? If we're honest, and who cares? Life is full. I'm not going big on the junk drawer issue. It's just a metaphor for us. It's really not just mess, it's just avoidance, right? It just takes that extra energy to think about where to categorize and place all of these different items. Like, what is the right spot that they fit in? And this is what we do a lot with our lives. I mean, it's hard to square up with our dirt. It's hard to be honest about it. We would rather relabel it or hide it or project it. I'm not, I don't think it's something I have to share with you guys, but it's an illustration, and I'm happy to share it this morning based on a conversation Mark and I had yesterday. I just had to tell him, like, hey, man, I think I was a little jealous and judgmental in that conversation, obviously jealous of Mark's hair. And for those that are listening to the podcast, they have no idea. But the idea for me was there's some dirt here. There's some dirt here, and I want to clean this up because I have the issue It's not the other person. It's not the person I was talking about to Mark. See, here's what happens for a lot of people that distort a healthy model of evil. They start thinking about purity in terms of a standard, and that standard is there, and we're going to beat you up if you don't live up to it. We're going to villainize you. You know, purity is done wrong and not biblically truthful when there needs to be a villain. There doesn't have to be a villain. It starts with us. It starts with us owning our own growth and transformation. A couple weeks ago, I had a little opportunity to compromise my morals and not be fully honest and have integrity in a situation. And it is truthful for me to say to you, I was tempted for a second. I could avoid some suffering if I just don't reveal this thing that I need to reveal. I could just hurt less. I think that's happening with some of these companies, because at some level they tell themselves, look, we'll just make this compromise this once. Business will turn around and get better, and then we'll make it all right. And then they look up and they've got 45 LLCs borrowing against each other, and it's this complicated mess. And I know that. And so it wasn't like this big deliberating moment, but it was a little bit of a like, man, it sure would be nice to not have to hurt on this. No kidding. I had this dream that there was a bear in the house, and I kept trying to protect my family from this bear. And one of the most vivid experiences I've ever had with this kind of dream. And I'm laying there and I'm sleeping. And while I'm sleeping, I can see myself sleeping, and I see the bear standing beside me, and it just takes one little claw and goes whoosh, and scratches me. And it hurts, and it wakes me up so much. And I sleep with a sleeping thing on to block light. I'm a freak about these things. And I woke up and I pulled open the little sleeping mask and I looked to see if the bear was there. That's how real it was. And for me, you know, I'm going to lose people with that story for sure. Sadly, they think that dreams are just the brain working stuff out and have no consequence. Yet we know from ancient wisdom that dreams can have meaning and give us messages, and we can interpret them. And for me, it was just a clear sense of like, hey, this isn't something to mess around with. Like, the bear doesn't need to be in the house. Don't compromise your morals and values. Stay true even if it's hard. Be courageous even if it costs. And that for me is what's so powerful about the biblical record, because it's helping us understand what evil really is. That it's not that there's a demon under every bush. It's not that we can chalk things, just say, well, I'm chalking that up to the devil. That was because the devil did that. And we're externalizing evil, because when we do that, here's what we do. We look for people to blame, and we use purity to punish, when transformation is actually us saying, where's my junk drawer? Where do I need a broom? If evil's a horror movie, you are hunting monsters and missing the mold in your own basement. So this takes us to a wild book today. As we build our understanding of evil biblically, we've got to get this part. In the ancient Near Eastern world, as societies were developing, they were developing moral codes. Because again, they're learning to self-govern. And so we talked about this with what happened with the beginning in Genesis, that Adam and Eve aren't dragged off by a horned monster, but there's a subtle twist. Did God really say? So then in Exodus, they're in slavery and they don't have any idea of who God is. And God says, hey, I'm slow to anger. I'm quick to love. I show my faithfulness for 1,000 generations. God, for the first time, is defining God to these people, and they're starting to get a concept of this. And so then we looked at last week in Leviticus, they're like, okay, we got to self-govern. We have to have some order. And as we order ourselves, we're paying attention to what does it mean for us to live with truth and clean the house. But you know what some people did? Some people use that to get power over others and punish others and blame others and make others the villain. Here's how it worked. So if you didn't have money to offer the right sacrifice, you weren't clean. So because you hit a hard time financially, you don't get to belong. Because it's not just for us like, oh, screw you, I don't care if you call me unclean. Clean, unclean, doesn't matter to me. No, listen, if you're considered unclean, you're pushed out of the community. You don't have the physical benefits of participating in the communal good, the being fed and working towards the common cause of everyone rowing and doing their part so we have sustenance. You don't have emotional health. I mean, there's a reason why in prisons they put you in solitary confinement, because there is a place in us that needs that social connection. And of course, we're different spectrums on this, but if you're completely cut off, like this is going to help us understand so much of the Gospels when we look at that in Jesus, because when people are begging to be healed, they're begging for their physical suffering to go away, but they're also begging to be able to go to their daughter's birthday party and once again be a part of the community. They're begging to be able to sit down with their dad and have a conversation. Like this is very, 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 very deep to the intrinsic way that they all lived and breathed in their society. And so what happens with this code in Leviticus that's there, people in power, the priestly class, started using it to build their own prestige, to gain wealth, to cut people out. You'd lose access to the marketplace, the communal table, feeling connected to God. You couldn't go to the tabernacle. And so it was religious gatekeeping, we could say, dressed up as holiness. And there's a book that comes along right after Leviticus that makes no sense unless you understand this backdrop. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers. Man, when I was a kid, I remember I grew up in church. One of my favorite things to just keep my mind occupied was I had basically a whole comic book of the Bible. Like, you couldn't take a comic book into church. Are you kidding? You would possibly be murdered. But I'm sitting there. I've got to be in big church as a little kid a ton. And I remember I had this Bible. It's called the Children's Bible. And it was just a big, giant comic book of the Bible. At least it was something, okay? I could go home and read my Batman comics. But I'm sitting there and it's, you know what? I remember a ton of those stories from that comic book Bible. I don't remember anything from Numbers. I mean, if you open Numbers up and you're looking through your Bible and you're like, what the heck? It's just like all these names. It's like a big giant counting and census. What's the point? I don't even understand why this is here. What's so crazy about the book of Numbers is it's going to color in our understanding of evil a little bit more. That the point of purity isn't to be against people, but with people. Every organization, every team, every family has its own culture. And that culture very often has a standard to it, like a purity code, we could say, compliance checklists, the values. And these either deepen the quality of the relationship in a healthy way, or they're menacing and used as a policing energy. And a clean culture isn't one that never gets dirty. It's one that keeps cleaning honestly. And so as we dive into Numbers, I want to remind you of a quote that I shared with you from Mary Douglas, the anthropologist. She said, evil is really best understood as dirt, and dirt is matter out of place. When my family eats couscous and the kids were little, my wife would have to prepare me. Hey, we got couscous happening tonight. I'm like, dang it, I'm tired. I don't want to eat couscous. Here's why. Because it's all over the floor. It's all over the floor. It's a mess. If we were eating couscous when the kids were little, I'm like, let's eat outside. But it's 27 degrees. It'll be better, trust me. I don't want to eat inside if we're eating. Now, if I see couscous on the plate, do I go, look at that? That's a problem. No. But if I see it on the floor, now it's a problem. It's out of place. And so Leviticus, this idea was, does it fit? Numbers is about when it doesn't fit, what do we do? Do we punish because you didn't follow the rules and now evil is here? Or do we use this understanding of purity, not for purity tests, not for outrage, but for restoration? So to understand Numbers, you got to think about the movie. I don't know how to say it. Tenet, everybody says it different. Christopher Nolan did a brilliant thing. If you've watched the movie, it's wild. You can watch the movie at any point and it's circular. I mean, he inverts time in the movie. He did it with Memento in a way. Inception has that feel to it also. There's other movies, Arrival, that have this story that like turns at the center. This is an ancient storytelling device. The Iliad and Odyssey work this way. It's called ring composition. So the stories operate in a ring. So much like I was saying last week, like Leviticus has this pattern to it, Numbers has this pattern to it. And this pattern are these structures where you can see where the chapters match up. You can look this up and you'll find it. So that one section matches to another section, one section matches to another section. It's a little bit different than what I was talking about with the chiastic structure last week, A to A, B to B, C to C. But you get this ring composition and you get right to the center point. Now, to understand this, why does Numbers have all this list of all these names and all these tribes over and over and over again in the book? Well, here's what's happening. It's all part of the ring structure. What the book of Numbers is saying, hey, while you're in the wilderness, it's really important that we number these tribes and everyone's counted so that there's order. And then in the book of Numbers, the tribes were organized around the tabernacle. There was a structure to it. It was spatial, it was symbolic. It was all part of this idea that we're in sacred geography. And then what is happening with all of these numbers, the book of Numbers, this counting, this census, there's identity in a continuation. The tribes are the memory of the patriarchs. We're not just existing here in the wilderness. We can't forget our story. We have to remember where we've come from, or we're not going to know where we're headed. And we're not going to get there if we don't have order and purity. Because if we don't have order and purity, we can't be close to God and close to each other. Now, there are basic ones that we look at and go, yeah, that makes complete sense. Use the bathroom outside of the camp. You're not clean if you touch a dead person. But there were a lot more things in Numbers also. And what happens in the book of Numbers that's really powerful is it is a purification ritual written as history. And the anthropologist we looked at last week, that was her sentence to describe Moses, Mary Douglas. She was emphasizing this idea that the shape of the text mirrors the process of holiness, that there's a center and everything is building out from that, that the structure of Numbers is a way to understand how to restore people, not punish them with purity. So how do we clean our house? How do we look at Numbers and understand what it means to really clean our house? John 17:17 says it this way: sanctify them by the truth. Your word is the truth. Clean them by the truth. Ephesians 5:26, cleansing her by the washing with water through the word. It was a tie back to the tabernacle. Hebrews 9, the blood of goats and bulls and the ashes of a heifer sanctify them so that they are outwardly clean. How much more will the blood of Christ cleanse our consciousness? If we confess our sins, he's faithful and just and will forgive us our sins and purify us from all unrighteousness. Jesus, what comes out of a person is what defiles them. All these evils come from the inside and defile a person. In the Gospels, a man with leprosy, if you're willing, you can make me clean. And Jesus says, I'm willing, be clean. Now, I heard about this concept of pure and clean so much that for so many years I'd hear it and just check out. It was boring, it was blasé, or it was just gross. Like, we got to find a better way to talk about all this. This doesn't connect with me emotionally. It doesn't make sense. I don't get it. I don't think about this in terms of clean and unclean. And as I really started to dive into this idea of what does it mean to understand evil, this model will help you care for your team, your family, your marriage, organizations, because it starts with cleaning with truth. Things get dirty. You know what? Sometimes they get a little bit dirty. Sometimes they get a lot dirty. Sometimes you go downstairs in the basement and you're like, oh my gosh, that is a big spot of mold. We got to take care of that. There's a crack in the foundation. We got to get this fixed. There's a gas leak. Leave the house now. There are things that come up that we have to be able to clean the house. And cleaning the house isn't just abstract, because it always involves someone's dirt that is on them. And what most people do is punish the person, and they use the idea of what's dirty or unclean to push them out and away, versus using purity so that they can feel clean and be restored. Like, that is huge to understanding the book of Numbers. It's a foreshadowing of Christ, and it's huge to understanding the Gospels. And so when we look at the book of Numbers, we see these stories that are taking place, and they're all a part of this ring structure to get us this idea of what's happening in this book. And the hinge point is this: the middle, where they do not enter into the promised land. They are in fear, not faith. And they can't believe that God's going to take care of them and lead them through. And so the grumbling spreads and they stay stuck. And so the idea is this: Numbers is written to help people that have been in a place that either they've been abused by the priestly class, or as a warning to the priestly class, the point of this truth isn't rules for rules' sake. It's order to restore people over and over and over. Now, here's just a couple of flyovers, and we're going to look at some text in Numbers in just a minute. But Numbers 16:5, in the morning the Lord will show who belongs to him and who is holy. Authority is God-given, not seized. The earth opened its mouth and swallowed them. Numbers 16:32, and the fire came out from the Lord and consumed the 250 men. This is crazy stuff in the book of Numbers. This wasn't in my comic book, showing people getting swallowed up and burned up. And again, hard for our mind to read it. Ancient mind reading this, what's happening collectively with us that this is going on? God's, for the first time ever, defined God's self in Exodus. I have compassion for 1,000 generations. I'm slow to anger. What they're seeing happen, is God the source of evil and suffering? No, James makes that clear. God does not tempt or test us. That is the work of evil. Evil does that. But there's something happening here that God is allowing. You look at this in the passage of the wilderness. The Spirit guides Jesus to the wilderness. There's a mystery in all this, man. This is a paradox of truths. It doesn't fully make sense to me. But what I can see in the emphasis here in the book of Numbers is exactly what we see in the New Testament. Not many of you should presume to teach. You will be judged more strictly. This priestly class that's saying, hey, we're the ones to represent God. We're the ones to stand in this place. They're being judged more strictly. And it's through Aaron and Moses that God says, no, this is who I'm blessing. This is who I want you to follow. Over and over, what happens in the book of Numbers is this reminder that the point of all of this isn't for your show. It's to restore and transform. At one point in the book of Numbers, they're encouraged to put tassels on their garments. Tassels on the edges of their garments. Why? As a reminder, so that they see it. Just like we would wear a tattoo or put a pin on a sport coat or anything like that, to put a visual symbol in front of you. It was for you. It was for you to be reminded. God is with you. God is faithful. God's going to lead you out. Because what had happened to them, that they had come this far, lost heart, because 10 of the 12 spies said, we can't do it. God's like, I even want your clothes to be a reminder to you that I'm always with you. Truth that cleans and restores. You start to get a little broken in your mindset, and you're like, God's out to get me. Why can't this work out? And you look at that tassel, and you're like, no, God's not out to get me. God is for me. That's a lie. That's false. This tassel's a reminder of truth. It's for you. It's transforming you. It's bringing you into the truth. So when you come back to this moment that you can enter into the promised land, you're going to get there. Fast forward a chunk of time. Guess what the Pharisees did? They would wear those tassels because for them it was a purity code. We got to do it or God's going to be mad at us. We got to wear our tassels. They're not doing it for their mindset, their transformation. They're doing it for show. You know why? Because they made them longer. I got to make sure that you guys see my tassels. Look how long they are. Look how faithful to God I am. And Jesus in Matthew 23 is like, you make your tassels long and your phylacteries wide. That's how they would like keep God's word close to them in a very legalistic way. But it doesn't matter because your motivation's wrong. You miss the point of it. Jesus, in deconstructing what the Pharisees do, is angriest at them, and it goes all the way back here to Numbers. It's such a powerful representation that the point of purity isn't rules to beat people up, but transformation. There's even a passage in Numbers 15, you can look at it later, verses 14 through 16. It's how people that aren't yet a part of the community, Gentiles in their terms, can participate in the culture and be transformed. It was a healthy way to do immigration. And what Jesus is doing is taking that through the Gospels as just an exposition and living out Numbers. It's not like Jesus would have been there at age whatever, 18, 19, and he's figuring out he's the Messiah, and he's like, I'm just going to reinvent this whole thing and burn the other part of it all down. It's not happening in a vacuum. He's reading Numbers and getting exactly what it's about. Of course there's a way for him to interact and include the Gentiles. Now, this is going to be like the dumbest point ever, but I want you to turn to Numbers 19 with me. Because in Numbers 19, we see a big part of the way this passage or this book starts to give us an insight. So, verse 1, the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, this is a requirement of the law that the Lord had commanded. Tell the Israelites to bring you a red heifer without defect or blemish, and that has never been under a yoke. Okay, now, I'll pause here. All of this seems like extra stuff from Leviticus. Like we already have the Day of Atonement. Why do we need this? So here's what I want you to look at, though. Verse 7. After that, the priest must wash his clothes and bathe himself with water. He may then come into the camp, but he will be ceremonially unclean till evening. So this is the evolution of their awareness and their consciousness. In Leviticus, the priests do the sacrifice, and they are perfectly pure, can't be touched. Then they start wielding some of their authority for their own good, trying to get their own financial benefit, excluding others, being insecure, manipulating. What's so revolutionary here about verse 7 is in Numbers, when the priest offers the sacrifice, they get unclean doing that. It's a levelizer. Now they're ceremonially unclean. They too are flawed. They too now aren't perfect. It is hard to get your mind around. I know, it's such a different way of thinking. It's like, who freaking cares? But like, look at the people that you think in this world where people would say their stuff never stinks. Their stuff stinks too. We all got stuff that stinks. So how can we outdo each other then? How can we outdo each other with who's more pure, who's better? Guys, if you think this only happens in religious contexts, oh my gosh, some of the most insane things I've ever seen is in business contexts. It's the same kinds of competition. Who's doing it the right way? I'm doing it the right way. You're not doing it the right way. What Numbers establishes is this. It's not a caste system. It's a cleansing system. And not even Moses is exempt. I mean, Moses at one point is told to strike the rock and a miracle of water occurs. Then he's told in another point to speak to the rock and water's going to come out. Why? It was a visual. God speaks and brings life. What does Moses do? Moses can't reinvent. And he goes back to what he knows, and so he strikes the rock. And God's like, okay, you're not going to lead them into the promised land. Why? Because God is just trying to punish Moses? No. It all worked out for Moses. Moses can't reconstitute, reinvent, reform his leadership style for what's needed to go into the promised land. There's a big difference between somebody who can run a team and reform and reconstitute the business or the team. Like, that's a different deal. It's why sometimes you'll see these companies, even churches, I've seen it, where the main person leaves and the person that comes in can't reform it for what it needs to be, can't help build the new wineskin. So they got to bring the other guy back, and they just keep doing what they're doing. And so Moses is told by God, look, I told you to speak to the rock, not strike the rock. You couldn't go to this next level of what I wanted you to be, so you would show that I just speak and bring life. You're not going to lead them in. I'm going to do that with Joshua, because Joshua can reconstitute this team. Joshua can reform this team. Joshua can help these people get out of what has been this 40-year holding place. I think about the era we live in now. Someone posts a clumsy comment online and attack dogs, purity code, HR enforcement. It happens on both sides. Religious extreme right, the Pharisaical approaches that any of us could imagine that quick. It's in businesses too. HR purity code. You can't say that. You can't do that. And I think we have to live in a place where we can speak truth. If we can't speak truth, we can't clean with truth. That's why this model starts with truth. But sometimes even in the speaking and cleaning of truth, we say things. We're clumsy. I was clumsy with my words yesterday. It's why I apologized to Mark this morning. But the point of my clumsiness isn't so I feel like a piece of crap and get excluded from the relationship with Mark. The point is to be restored. All of you in some point in your lives are going to face situations where someone loses the way. And you have to hold the standard of truth. But holding the standard of truth isn't to beat them down. It's to restore them. It's a project manager that misses deadlines. And rather than the leader addressing it and restoring them with truth, she just cuts them out of future projects. It's just easier. It's, in my pastoring experience, the volunteer who ran the screen, click, 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 as the worship team would lead us. Some days coming in smelling a whole lot more like alcohol than just a human man. It's all a part of the process. Oh, you can't do it. You obviously fell. And of course, there's appropriate boundaries to put in place. That's where we're headed next in this model. How do we guard the house with wisdom? But first, we have to clean it with truth. Truth without a return path is just punishment theater. And it's exactly what Numbers is deconstructing. And so I wondered as I watched Willow Creek's 50-year service, how would they handle the blight on their story? They've got this innovative leader who has transformed so much. What are they going to do to clean the house with truth on this? Because just a month ago, one of the most influential leaders in the country got on the stage and kind of spoke exuberantly positive about Bill Hybels. And a lot of people were really upset because of all the victims and what it does to take them out of the story. And I couldn't believe it. It was really powerful, guys. They had stacks of giant rocks that people brought out for all the chapters of their story. The compassion. I mean, they've fed so many people. The multi-site, the people that have been reached. It was really, really moving. And then they took a rock called failure, and they just propped it up on the side of all these rocks. And they talked openly about the failure. And they just said it out loud. And God is bigger than the failure. And the failure is with us. We're leaning it against the rocks because it's a part of all this. It's not just the big failure you know about. Failure is a part of it. We screw up. We mess up. Grace is so powerful to restore us. And I was like, man, I got chills. Because they understood the point of it isn't to sweep it away like it never happened. And the point also isn't to stay in this place of menacing punishment. It's a restoration. Let us restore others with truth.
I hope you enjoyed this teaching from 15and. Go to 15and.org, share these resources with others, and click the Donate Now button to participate in funding this mission.